So this is my touring pedal board. Now this has been my pedal board for around about 2.5 years now. In that time I've made the odd little tweak, like pulling the odd drive pedal out and putting something different in place. But for the most part this is pretty much what I've taken on the road with me for that time. Now I really like the way this board sounds and I'm very, very happy with all the sounds I've been able to get from it, all of the shows I've done with it. It's been very reliable and very dependable. But I'm kind of reaching a bit of a crossroads right now where I kind of feel like I want to explore some new sounds and I can't quite get some of those sounds from this array of pedals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebuild my board. And also, like I said, it's been on the road with me for 2.5 years. I want to give the cables a freshen up. I'm going to build some new cables for this. I've got a new power supply I want to put in and just generally freshen the whole board up because I now have another busy 1.5 years worth of touring in the diary. So I want to make sure this thing is peak condition, but also, like I said, just to give me a little bit more inspiration and refresh with some new sounds, because there's a bunch of new pedals I've acquired in the last couple of months that I haven't actually put on a board yet, and I really want to. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So in this first video, we're going to be taking my existing board apart, and then I'm going to show you what's going to be going on the board. We're going to be talking about the planning stage of building a pedal board, the way I'm going to be routing the cables and how I'm going to go about that. In the second part of this video, I'm going to be putting this thing together, and then in the third part, we're going to hear all of the sounds. So before I start to rip my pedal board to pieces, I want to let you guys know that this is not a sponsored video. I'm not getting paid by any of the brands for making this video, but a few of the brands that I will be using products from have provided me with those products because they were things that I wanted to source for the pedal board. There's a few things that I'm going to be putting on that I bought myself, and a few things that have been provided to me for the purpose of this video, which I will talk about in more detail as we go through. So the first thing is just to rip this thing apart, because we need to make sure everything is off and ready to go. So in its existing form, this is how the board looks from the top down. Now, some of these things on the board are going to be staying because there are a few things on this board that have kind of become things that I'm very attached to and kind of pedals that are essential for me. And there are a few things that are going to be going in place of some new things that I want to try out. So I'm just going to start tearing this thing apart now and putting everything to one side, and then I'll show you what's going to be going on to the new board. So there's the blank shell of what was my pedal board. Now, I'm going to set all of these cables to one side, and I'm going to show you the underneath of this. Up until now, I've been using this power supply, which is the Walrus Audio Phoenix power supply. Now, this is a really good power supply. This has been very, very dependable. It's got a lot of outputs, and it's been a very stable power supply in all the years that I've toured it. The only reason I'm changing this today is because I have a new power supply that I wanted to try out for a while that has some slightly higher output currents. This one has a lot of outputs, but the maximum current that any one output outputs is 300 milliamps. And I've got a couple of pedals that are going to be quite high usage that I want to put on. So I want something that can output a little bit more than 300, which is the whole reason I'm changing today. What I'm going to be putting on is a Voodoo Labs Pedal Power 3. So I'm just going to start by taking this power supply out, and then I'll show you everything that's going on the board as part of the planning stage. Now, when you're building a pedal board, whatever level the board is going to be or whatever complexity the board is going to be, this stage is very essential. The planning stage is where you're going to basically come up with the concept for your board and make sure that you don't make any silly mistakes. I have done this loads of times in the past where I've just thrown stuff onto a board and then realized pretty quickly when I've gotten to the kind of final stages that I've made a bit of an error, which is going to cause me some issues further down the line. So the more time you spend at this stage, really kind of planning it out and making sure you've got everything lined up the right way, is so essential. Now you'll see already my board actually has a lot of these cable tie kind of loops here already. These are really essential for cable management on any board. And to be honest with you, they cost next to nothing. They're a couple of pounds on Amazon, and you can get like a bag of like 100 of them for next to nothing. And they just keep cables Admittedly, my cabling is really not that neat at the moment because I had to do some troubleshooting recently on a power cable and I had to just quickly put it back together for some shows. But it's a great way of keeping things nice and neat underneath the board. So this is the power supply that's coming out. Great power supply and has been incredibly dependable for the last 2.5 years. Well, actually, it's been on my board for longer than that, just in this current state for 2.5 years. So there we go. There is the board ready to go. And the board I'm using is a Pedal Train Classic 2. I'm a big fan of the Pedal Train stuff because it's got the actual angle to it. So when you're playing on stage, you can actually access all your pedals quite easily. Pedal Train stuff's just super robust as well, and the actual frame is really lightweight, and they have fitted touring hard cases, which is great. I've just been a fan of the brand for such a long time. And also, it's a big enough board that I can fit quite a lot of stuff on there for most gigs, but it's not one of those huge boards that's kind of, you know, unmanageable for one person to look after. So, you've seen my previous board, and now I'm going to show you what I'm planning to put on this board and talk about some of the logic behind why. So there's a few things that you've already seen that are going to be going back on the board. One of those is the Line 6 HX Stomp XL. This is a huge part of my pedal board because it controls a bunch of different things. I'm using this for a couple of different modulation effects. I'm using it for some lead boosts. I'm using it for compression. I've got a clean boost in there as well. And it also acts as a failsafe because even though I'm running my board into an amp, what I can also do is I can set up a separate patch in here that feeds a separate output, which feeds a DI box. So if my amp on stage goes down, then I can switch to the other patch, and then this can feed the front of house, and this can act as my amp. So it's a bit of a fail-safe as well. But also, if I ever need to do any gigs where I can't take an amp, I can literally just take my board, and this can also be my amp for those gigs. So that is going to go right here. Might adjust the placement a little bit once I've got some cables in, just so I can make sure I've got clear cabling there at the back. The other thing that's definitely going on that's been on there before is this. Now this is the Dunlop Crybaby Billy Duffy model. This is a wah pedal that, to be honest with you, I never really wanted to take out on the road because it's actually a limited edition model that they did about 10 years ago. And I always wanted this just as a collector's piece, but I loved it so much that it just ended up being on my pedal board. So it's got a few chips and scuffs and battle scars. I may see if I can source another one at some point just to have one of them in good condition just for the collection. But yeah, I love this thing so much that it's ended up being my main wah. It's a switchless wah, so it stays in the heel down position. And as soon as you put your foot on it, it releases a switch there in the heel, which turns the wah on. Now for me, I actually find that a little bit more useful because when you put the wah on, you get the sweep into the wah. Whereas when you have the button at the front and you turn it on, you're straight at the peak of the wah. So I actually find this a little bit more usable as well for live shows. It has two different circuits in as well, which you control with this little switch on the side. And it goes between a wah circuit that is based, I believe, on Mick Ronson's original wah. And then the second circuit is like Billy Duffy's own take on the 535Q model, I think, which has a filter control and a boost as well. So if you're playing leads and you want to kick up the volume a bit, you can do that. So that is my wah of choice. That is going to live right there. And then the next thing that's going back on the board is this thing. This is the Detox EQ from a company called Homebrew Electronics. This is a company that doesn't actually exist anymore, but you can still get these on the secondhand market. This is a pedal that was designed in collaboration with Paul Gilbert. And the whole idea behind this pedal is that it kind of acts as a clean channel for an overdriven amp. So if you were playing a single channel amp that was cranked up, you would use this pedal to give yourself a clean sound. So it's kind of like a reverse boost in a way. The volume control acts like a volume control on your guitar. So instead of rolling back the guitar to get a clean sound, you'd use the pedal volume. So you roll this back and then turn this on, and then you get a clean signal to the amp. But this has an active EQ circuit with bass, middle, and treble frequencies. So you can cut and boost frequencies to add in anything that the volume roll-off loses. And with them being boostable, and with them being EQ controls that you can boost, you can actually add that volume back in that you lose, so you get a loud, clean sound. It's a really good pedal, but what I actually use it for is I leave the volume on full, and I just use it like an EQ pedal. because I find that it always adds a little bit of something to my sound. I actually took this off my board for quite a few years, and I always thought it sounded okay, but I always felt something was maybe, maybe missing. And then recently, about 6 months ago, I put this back on the board, and all of a sudden I remembered why I never took it off my board in the first place. So this is going straight back on. I actually like this thing so much, I've actually bought a second one of them just in case something happens to this one. Now, with this being a pedal that is just going to be always on, I don't really need access to it. So I'm just going to put this at the top of the board there. I'm just going to put it there for now. It's not going to live exactly in that position, but I'm going to move it a little bit further down later on. I love clon pedals, and I like having a clon pedal always on. Previously, I've been using this, which is the Cherry Tone Centura, which I absolutely love, and I love the way that it actually looks like a clon. That's one of my favorite things about it. But it's so big, wherever I put it on the board, it just takes up a lot of space. And as a pedal that I literally just have as an always-on pedal, it's kind of a shame that it just takes up that much space. So what I'm actually replacing this with is the new Wampler Germanium Tumnus, and this is going to be my always-on clon. That's going to go up here on the board because, again, I don't need access to it, so it's just going to live out of the way. I've been using the TC Electronics Polytune 3 for the last couple of years. Again, great tuner. This replaced my Boss TU3, which I've used forever. Just wanted to try something different with this one, and now I'm trying something different again with this one, which is the Walrus Audio Canvas tuner. This is the new tuner from Walrus, and it's not any better or worse than the Polytune or anything else. I just like the fact that it's got a screen on there and I can have pictures on the screen. So this is kind of going on just because I fancy something a little bit fun and a bit novelty on my board for a while. Now, I love the sound of a clon when it's overdriven as well. And I was always torn with the Centura whether I should run it with the drive on or as a kind of a clean boost. So I want a clon drive on my board as well. So I'm going for the Origin Effects Halcyon Gold Overdrive. This is kind of like their take on the clon, but it's a little bit more tweakable. So this is going to go on the board, and that's going to live there next to the canvas. Then we come on to the bottom row. The next is a new pedal for me, but it's not a new pedal in general. I bought this secondhand on Reverb recently, and this is a Love Pedal Les Lias. I have a clone of this that I built years and years ago, which I loved. And I've always loved the sound of tweed amps. I have a tweed style amp that I use a lot, and I have other pedals that kind of do the tweed amp thing, but this was always my reference for that sound, so I kind of set out to find one, and I found one for a decent price. So this is going on the board, and that's going to be like my kind of tweed in a box sound for when I need that, and that's going to live underneath those pedals there. Then another pedal that I can't be without is my Analog Man King of Tone. This is a drive pedal, again, that's been on every pedal board since I got it. And again, one of those pedals like the Billy Duffy Wah that I never ever wanted to take out on the road because I was on the waiting list for 4 years to get one of these. And in the 4 years that I've owned this, I've literally never switched the thing off. So it's really hard to not take this on the road with me, even though I've tried to replace it many times and retire it. For now, it's going to be living on the board. So that's going to go there. Then the next thing is my MXR Timmy. This is one of the things I always use as a lead boost for live. I love this thing. It just really fattens up those single notes when you're playing them, and it just kind of makes your guitar solos really kind of cut through the mix. So I've always had that on a board in recent years as a boost. Now I've got a couple of new pedals as well that are going on the board. One of which is the MXR Joshua. Now, I did a demo of this at the start of the year, and I liked it so much I actually reached out to MXR and I asked them if I could have one because I really, really liked it. And even though it's designed as kind of an emulation of a classic rack unit where you've got modulations and delays, what I'm actually going to be using this for is something I talked about in that demo video, which is how it can do a really cool 80s clean sound because it's got a built-in chorus, built-in reverb, and built-in compression. So that's actually what I'm going to use that for. That's my 80s button. So whenever I want anything to sound like the 1980s, I'm going to hit that button. And then another new one, the TC Electronics June 60, another chorus pedal. This is actually something I picked up fairly recently when I went up to London to shoot some content at the new Dawson store. And this is something I picked up on that trip. This is their take on the Roland Juno Synths chorus module, but in a guitar pedal. So that's also going to go on the board because I really like the kind of warm analog sound of that chorus. And again, it's quite 80s, so you notice a theme here. I like 80s guitar sounds. And then the final thing that's coming on the board is the TC Electronics Hall of Fame Mini. This is the version 1, not even the version 2 of this. I've had this pedal for maybe 15 years, and this is my favorite reverb pedal. I've got other reverb pedals that I think sound great and are way more complex and tweakable than this, but I just like the fact that this has one knob and it fits really easily anywhere on my pedal board, and I just like the way the reverb sounds, so that's going to live just in there somewhere. So that is pretty much how my new pedal board is going to look. Now, part of the planning stage is knowing how to route a lot of this stuff. Now, the way I use this is I'm using the HX Stomp for some effects that sit before my drives and some effects that sit after my drives. So I'm actually using the loop of this as well. So the way my signal flow is going to go is it's going to run into the wah first, then it's going to go out of the wah into the tuner, so out of here into there, out of the tuner into the tumnus, out of the tumnus into the detox EQ, and then at that point it's going to go into the helix. So we've got wah, tuner, clon, EQ, helix. At this point, the helix is going to be doing some signal processing, so there's going to be a little bit of a noise gate just for some venues where there's bad power. There's going to be a compressor that I use for clean stuff, and then there's also going to be a clean boost that I use when I just need single note clean things to cut through the mix. That's then going to come out of the send of the loop, and it's going to go through my drive pedals. So it's going to go through the Halcyon first, then the Leslie S, then the King of Tone, then the Timmy. Then I'm actually just going to run it through these three as well, just because it's easier for cabling. So it's going to run into the Joshua, the June 60, the Hall of Fame, and then back into the return of this. And then there's going to be some extra stuff going on. There's going to be a delay in this that I'm going to be using, and maybe another modulation effect if I need it, and another different type of lead boost as well with a different flavor. And then that will route out to my guitar amp. But there'll also be a second patch of this that I'll set up at some point. It will feed a DI box, and this will be my fail-safe. So if my rig goes down on stage, I can change preset on here. It'll feed a DI box, and then this will then become my guitar amp with my pedal. So that kind of covers the planning stage of building a board. So I've planned this out now. I've got the plan in my head of where this is going. I know what the routing order is going to be and how the cabling is going to go. So now we're going to go to that second video and we're going to put this thing together. So thank you guys for watching this. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of my pedal choices. If there's anything you would or wouldn't have chosen for this board, I'd love to hear your reasons why as well. And if you've got any of this stuff on your own board, I'd love to hear how you're using it as well. Don't forget to hit the like button, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing, and I will see you guys in the second video.